One of the things that really is a big part of my belief system is that there's a philosophy in herbal medicine called the doctrine of signatures. And the doctrine of signatures looks at that nature gives us hints as to what the plants are good for. And this sounds a little superstitious, but for example, beet juice really does build the blood. And kidney beans, they really do tonify the kidneys. And blueberries are really good for the eyes, even brown eyes. And if you think about how wonderful eating something that's fresh and uncooked, how the vitality of the plants are conserved. I love the way I feel from this. When your friends tell you, I have headaches, I have cramps, I'm so low energy, why not show them something that they'll probably love that's really easy? And so it's good to introduce this to people. You love your friends, you care about them, invite them over for dinner, have potlucks. I wanted to share with you the wonders of buckwheat. And buckwheat is not related to wheat. It's actually a relative of rhubarb and smartweed and the Chinese herb Hoshu Wu, which means Mr. Wu's hair stays black. Those are all relatives of buckwheat. So buckwheat, when it's in its whole form, has little black seeds that are encased in a triangular seed capsule. And you're welcome to look in here and even feel the triangular seed capsule. So for those people who are allergic to wheat, just remember, buckwheat is not related to wheat. And in many of the Nordic cultures in Russia and in Eastern Europe, people, especially athletes, eat a lot of buckwheat in the belief that it's going to help keep you warm in winter and give you a lot of energy. I'm told that many of the Russian athletes travel with buckwheat when they go to compete and to train for the Olympics, that buckwheat is a staple that they carry with them. So you may have heard of the grain kasha, which is basically toasted buckwheat. It's also used a lot in Jewish cookery and Middle Eastern cookery and Polish cookery. So buckwheat is really a very multifaceted grain. This is actually a tray of grass that's been growing for 3 weeks, and I'm going to pass it around, and I encourage you to pick a blade of buckwheat lettuce and just munch on it. It has a nice lemony taste. And you can pick it kind of close to the ground, but you don't need to, pick it. You don't need the soil or the root. Basically, what I did to grow this buckwheat is I soaked the buckwheat seeds overnight, and then I spread them on a tray of dirt. I prefer using a stainless steel tray rather than plastic, because plastic gives off a hormonal-like compound called xenoestrogens, which is suspected of being carcinogenic. So stainless steel is hard. You certainly don't want to use an aluminum tray. So you soak the buckwheat seeds overnight, maybe 2 cups of them, spread them on about 1/4 of an inch of organic potting soil, and then water it every day. It doesn't take a lot of light. We don't have a lot of light here in our condominium. And yet, this is the 3rd week that this buckwheat lettuce has been growing. And so the doctrine of signatures here for me is how wonderful it is to eat something so fresh that it's still growing. So go ahead and eat a few sprigs of it. It has a nice lemony taste. This is wonderful in salad. And so the doctrine of signatures when it comes to freshness is that most of the food that we eat has been harvested at least 6 weeks ago. That's why, papayas are never quite as good here as they are in Hawaii or Mexico. So to eat something that was just growing, I feel, contributes to longevity, to vitality, and to making you feel alive and vital. So buckwheat lettuce is really a lot of fun. You want to get the sunflower tray as well? This is called kitchen gardening, and thank you. So another important part of raw food, and I think just healthy living in general, is as much as possible you want to eat local and organically. And this is, moving into fall time for us here now. So there's not as the farmer's market is over. What's really in season? I see this as a season to eat more kitchen things that you can grow yourself. And this is a tray of sunflower grass. So basically I soaked sunflower seeds in the shell overnight, and then spread them out on a 1/4 inch of organic potting soil. And this is a week old, okay? And we'll be able to eat this for 3 weeks. When our daughter Rainbow was pregnant, she came home one weekend and said, "Mom, I really want macaroni and cheese." Even though she's a raw foodist, all her cravings were coming up. And I said, "I can make macaroni and cheese, sprouteroni and cheese." The little sunflower grass became the noodles, and then I made a pine nut cheese. And that's become one of our quick, fast recipes that we make when we're in a hurry, but it's so delicious. So if you do pick a sunflower green, and I encourage you to, you don't need to eat the shell. You just want the little open green. And if you're wondering where can you grow sprouts in your kitchen, it's a great use for the stove. You know, we use the stove maybe to boil water and make tea now, but and we use the oven to store things like the juicer and, extra trays. I know some raw foodists get rid of their cooking pots, but I find them actually helpful for soaking things overnight and, mixing bowls and all that. The 2 things we grow on trays are buckwheat lettuce and sunflower greens. But I want to show you another method of sprouting. This is the glass jar method. And here I have hulled buckwheat without the hull. So it doesn't have the little brown case. And basically you can buy sprouting lids at the health food store. You soak maybe half a cup of hulled buckwheat overnight and then pour the water off. You can use the water to give water to your plants. There's a Hindu proverb I like a lot that says, if you have water to throw away, throw it on a plant. But you don't want to drink the water. And you'll see that it's growing little tails. So maybe I wanted to make tonight tabbouleh salad. But I don't want to use bulgur wheat, which is a wheat product, a common allergen. I could just use the rinsed sprouted tabbouleh. So the jar method is great for alfalfa sprouts and lentils and mung beans. So most things I grow in the jar method. This past week I sprouted quinoa in the jar method. Again, I think the real magic in sprouts is that they are still growing, they're still alive, and it's a vitality that you really just can't beat. One of the things we like to do with our sprouted hulled buckwheat is to make a little cereal, which we call buckwheaties. So the buckwheat gets sprouted, and then we dehydrate it on a dehydrator, which I'll talk more about later, and then I add some raisins to it, and we make a cereal. So on those mornings when it's a little cold, you don't really feel like having cereal or fruit, you don't feel like having fruit, you can use your sprouted buckwheat cereal with raisins or apricots or whatever, and mix it with almond milk and have a bowl of cereal. So if you want to taste that, it's really quite plain, but with the addition of almond milk, it stays crunchy in milk longer than any, main brand cereal you've ever had. A lot of things sprout better when the weather's a little cold, and it's important that you turn the jar upside down so the water doesn't stay in. But you can sprout spelt and kamut. You can sprout many things, even wild green seeds, lamb's quarter. I recommend sprouting more in the colder months. A question I often get asked is, where do you get your vitamin B12? I eat a little bit of wild, unwashed plants, just freshly picked outdoors. So things like, malva and violets. And you actually get vitamin B12. Your body makes it, but you get it from soil microorganisms. So I want to just show you a couple basics. We're going to make some nut nog, but first we have to make almond milk. I show that in almost every class.
One more question about the sprouting. In some of the sprouting books, it says you should rinse your sprouts at least 3 or 4 times a day. Is that what you do?
I generally rinse them once a day, maybe twice a day. So be careful in warm weather. I don't even sprout much in warm weather. I tend to do it more in the colder months because I think that might be more of a problem. In the warm weather, I'm going to go pick wild things outdoors. Mark?
What's the nutritional and energetic difference between eating those buckwheat sprouts while they're living or drying them and eating them when they're dry?
In general, let me just say this, the nutritional difference between like a sunflower seed and a raw sunflower seed, in general, sprouting something increases the vitamin C content, it increases the vitamin E content, and it increases the protein content. As long as you dehydrate things at a low temperature, you can preserve the enzymes. Enzymes are killed at about 114 degrees. So if I bake the buckwheat sprouts in the oven, there wouldn't really be any virtue or benefit. But the fact that they're dehydrated at usually under 100 degrees in our house, we try to keep the dehydrator low. We're saying that the only thing you're really getting rid of is the water. There might be a slight decrease, but the fact that the temperature's extra low, it seems to be better. We'll get to taste these. This is a flax cracker, okay? It's nothing but flax seeds and sun-dried tomatoes and water. We had a flax cracker get soggy. It was on someone's plate. And I have the bad habit of I just throw stuff out in the yard, like to feed the squirrels and be fertilizer. Well, I came back a few weeks later, and there were thousands of flax plants growing from a dehydrated flax cracker. So to me, the life force, the fact that it could still sprout, is really the telltale that the life force is still there. Had it been baked in the oven, it wouldn't have sprouted. So I'm going to make almond milk for y'all. One of the things that's done in a live food diet is you want to soak your nuts overnight and then rinse them. The reason for that is you want to get rid of the enzyme inhibitors. So enzyme inhibitors are in nuts, beans, seeds, and grains. And what do the enzyme inhibitors do? They basically prevent the nuts, beans, seeds, and grains, which are all life force concentrate storehouses. They keep them from sprouting ahead of their time. So what if you had, humid climate and there were sunflower seeds in the bulk bins at the co-op and it got a little moist? They'd start growing leaves. It would just be like, the eggplant that ate Chicago or something. They'd be growing all over the place. So it's believed, of course, it's hard to know what squirrels are really up to, but it's believed that the squirrels are actually trying to get rid of the enzyme inhibitors when they bury their nuts in the soil. So I want to pass this around. These are almonds that have soaked overnight. They've also been rinsed. And I'd like you just to taste a soaked sprouted almond. So I've already rinsed the enzyme inhibitors off. And when you do that, what you're basically doing is you're making the nuts softer. You're making them come to life. And a lot of things like sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds will actually sprout little tails. So you're activating them. So I have a cup of soaked almonds here. I'm going to add a quart of water to that and just show you how easy it is to make almond milk. Every kitchen should have a blender. So, just simply the almonds, 1 cup of almonds, 1 quart of water. We're going to blend it. So this is just so easy. And I know for years we've been going to the health food store to buy rice milk, oat milk, soy milk. And this is almond milk. What we're going to do is strain the almond pulp out. Now, how long did that take to make? This is called a nut milk bag. Okay, so we've got a quart of almond milk. And the almond milks that you buy in a package have been heated because in order to be, in an aseptic package, they're heated and heated and heated. So here we go, a quart of fresh almond milk. It would have taken me longer to go across the street to the health food store. You can also make sesame milk, pecan milk, macadamia nut milk. Now we have all this almond pulp left over. So what I'd like to do is just show you how to make an almond cheese with this leftover pulp. But there's other things you could do with the almond pulp. I could use it to make cookies. I could use it to make pie crust. Just add a little water and olive oil and dehydrate it in a pie pan. I could use it, if I put some dates with it, an instant pie crust. I could use it to make, cheese. So we have here some almonds, a couple tomatoes. I'm going to add a little olive oil and salt, and you will see we'll have instant almond cheese. Tommy, maybe we could give everyone a little taste of just the almond milk. I could put honey or dates in it, but I'm just going to let you have it plain and simple this time. Yeah, and I think... have a vegan eggnog coming up here. All right. And if you have banana peels to throw away, rose bushes really love banana peels. Yeah, they're great fertilizer. I'm making eggnog, and I have some recipes for you all. Your little recipe book of the day of what we're going to be making. So the first thing we're making here is the nut nog. Yes, let's pour that into here. So there's, that's the first recipe that you're getting. That's all, but we'll use the rest in a minute.
Now what is in there?
Bananas, nutmeg, almond milk, vanilla. I didn't soak the dates this time because the dates I'm using are soft. So most of the recipes will suggest that you soak dates. If you buy soft dates, you don't need to soak them. But, some dates can be really hard. Then you soak them for 20 minutes, not in too much water, but just so that they get soft enough to blend. But if you use soft dates, you can bypass that step. Did you all taste the difference in the soaked almonds and how they really are, they've come to life? So I'm going to talk more about what you can do with that. I'm just going to taste this to see if it's good enough for everybody. And then...
Organic raw almonds or just regular almonds raw?
They're good?
Yes, you got to have some...
Same cups? Put it in the same cup. Huh?
Yay. And another good thing about this raw life is that you hardly ever make something that tastes bad. Almost everything comes out pretty darn good. Tommy, you got to try it because it's so good. I think you're going to be happy. I'm going to go ahead and turn this almond pulp into almond cheese to give you some ideas of what you can bring. And basically, I'm going to take 2 cups of almond pulp, 2 little tomatoes, about half a teaspoon of Celtic salt, and maybe a 1/4 cup of olive oil. I'll kind of do it by looks, but that's going to become an almond cheese, which is great spread on crackers to take to work with you. Okay, so we've got the almond pulp because nothing gets wasted. I've got 2 little tomatoes. The kind of salt we use is Celtic salt because Celtic salt is unheated. Do you know most salt is heated? And then they remove the minerals from the salt and sell it to the vitamin companies. And one of my teachers used to say, in order to have healthy blood, we have to have good salt. Get the big Celtic salt. The little Celtic salt is supposedly heated. So I put about 3/4 of a teaspoon of Celtic salt, about 1/4 of a cup of nutritional yeast. And nutritional yeast is not a truly raw product. However, if you're eating something mostly raw and you add a tablespoon of this, a tablespoon of that, here or there, I don't think that's a big problem. Most people will still eat it. I'm adding about a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and you'll see that we've made cheese, which can be a sandwich spread for the whole week. According to Dr. Luc de Schepper, who wrote the book Candida, to quote him directly, he says, "It's a shame people who have yeast overgrowth think they need to avoid nutritional yeast. It's not a live yeast. It's really not the same as Candida albicans." Okay, so I'm just whizzing this up. Okay. So I'm just tasting this to make sure it's good enough for you all. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Victoria grinds up the almonds in the water and then lets it sit and drain overnight. And
Okay.
so it's sort of
Fermented a little bit to make cheese. Yeah. Sometimes I let it. Sometimes I do that. I'll let it sit like overnight. You could let it ferment a little bit. The other thing I'll just say about raw food is substitute like crazy. Let's say you don't have tomato. You've got a red pepper. Use a red pepper. Thank you. Let's say you like garlic. Put some garlic in there. Maybe you don't want to use salt. You could put kelp in there. So I'm going to just basically pass this around, have you each put a little cheese on a flax cracker. And what makes a really great lunch is a flax cracker with a slice of avocado. That's for you, my love. And this also could be a nice party dip because, the other part of our theme here today is party foods because it's the holiday season and you've got to bring something to a potluck or you're invited to a regular dinner and you want to bring something that you can share with your loved ones so that you're contributing. But how long did that take to make? And it really satisfies. You're like, I want something proteinish. Almonds are high in calcium, just like we celebrate cheese for being high in. So, that and a tomato and avocado, and you've got lunch.
One of the wonderful things about raw food is it's pretty hard to mess it up. You almost have to try to mess it up. I mean, most of the things that we serve to people in these things we've never made it before. And very rarely is it not delicious.
Yes.
The eggnog, I noticed you're not using powdered cinnamon. Do you put a big chunk in there, or do you grind it? Or what do you do?
They were out of powdered cinnamon at the co-op, but actually, I think you get better flavor from herbs when you use them more whole. Because good cooks know if you want to use cardamom in a dish, and you buy powdered cardamom that was powdered like 8 months ago, and then you bought it and you kept it in a cupboard for another 2 years, the flavor's not going to be as good as if it were freshly ground cardamom. So yesterday, Tom just bought some cinnamon and we freshly powdered it, and it's a little chunky. We also took whole nutmeg pods and ground it up, and I think that's often the little difference between being an okay cook and a great cook is to use fresh herbs that you grind up. And once an herb is powdered, the essential oils start evaporating. So there's really a loss in essential oil, which makes it flavorful. So use whole herbs whenever you can. But we use so much cinnamon. Had they had powdered cinnamon, I probably would have used it.
How do you grind it?
Well, in the blender.
Grind it dry, it'll turn to powder. You had it in a liquid, and so it really didn't grind it up completely. But if you just grind it dry, it'll turn to a complete powder in a good blender.
And this is every herbalist tool. It's a mortar and pestle. You can see there's some fresh ground nutmeg in there. So I will just tell you how we made the flax crackers. Basically, we're going to make flax crackers, or at least get them started. You soak the flax seeds, 2 cups of flax seeds in 4 cups of water for about 15 minutes, and the flax seeds will absorb all the water. And then you can really add anything you want. In this case, I added rosemary, a few sliced tomatoes, which became dried tomatoes. But you could put seaweed in there. Let's say if you have children, you could put bananas in there and raisins to make like a little sweet cracker. You could put apples in there, any kind of red pepper, curry powder, chili powder. I'm also quite fond of Cajun spice powder, which is sort of a Louisiana-style take on it. But the basics are 2 cups of flax seeds, 4 cups of water, soaked for 15 minutes. And so now the flax seeds are in water. If you want to pass this around just to see what it looks like right now, the way we make Nito burritos is we sprout the flax seeds for 2 days. And the flax seeds start growing little tails. And then we add sun-dried tomatoes and chili powder. And that makes burrito base. Flax seeds you don't rinse. There's a few nuts and seeds you don't really need to rinse. Pine nuts is another one. So you don't have to rinse the really small seeds. Although I do rinse alfalfa sprouts when I'm sprouting them. But flax seeds, they tend to gel up. So if you try to rinse them, you're just going to make a big mess. So I have all these almonds that have been soaking, okay? They soaked, they were rinsed. But maybe I want to take a snack to the movies, or I have friends coming over and, we want to, have some recreation. We're not going to eat soggy, wet nuts, right? That's just not going to be that good. So I'm just going to show you what we might do with our nuts. don't some of you like tamari nuts? This is one of your last recipes. It's called holiday nuts. And I'm improvising a little bit. I'm going to put some chili powder on these wet almonds. And I think maybe just a little hit of olive oil. Not much, maybe about a teaspoon or so. Just a little bit of Celtic salt. And then what I can do is dehydrate the nuts and make them roasty and crispy. So I have a mixture just like this, and then I'm going to put it in the dehydrator. So if you want to just see what that looks like. And what I have here for you to try are sunflower seeds that did get dehydrated. So these are sunflower seeds that got soaked and rinsed, and I took the wet nuts and I put different things on them. You could put garlic powder on it, chili powder, curry powder, and dehydrated them. And then this makes a nice party snack or something to sneak into the movies, because if they catch you taking them into the movies, they'll bust you. But, we like to have something when we go to the movies. So some of the main things to have in your kitchen if you want to do this live food thing is a blender, a food processor, and a dehydrator. And I think we're still kind of having breakfast. So I have some scones here. And you have a recipe for apple raisin scones. And, during the holidays, there's so many tempting things. And people bring out these cookies that remind you of your childhood. And they bring donuts over. And I thought it was important to do a holiday workshop, because I think this is a place where people's resolve often gets diminished. So I have these apple raisin scones, and I added cranberries to them just to make them a little more festive. And I think I could make them even just a little bit more festive by adding some frosting to it. You have several frosting recipes in the back of your booklet there. So I've got about half a cup of dates, half a cup of macadamia nuts, which are deliciously decadent and high in fat. Good fat. One of my favorite things to use, let's say I just need like a tablespoon of liquid. I could use water. I could use almond milk. But, I'm kind of a gourmet at this. I'm going to use just like a spoon of orange flower water or rose flower water, rose water. Now, they're not necessarily raw, and they're probably not organic. But again, I'm using like a teaspoon or a tablespoon to make it so flavorful that it just really, like, wow. That's what you want, people to say, wow. So hopefully you will. I'm going to put a little hit of the eggnog in the frosting to make it a little more pureed. I think we got it. I think we got it. So I mentioned beet powder. Beet powder you can buy at health food stores, usually in the bulk herb department. Beet, B-E-E-T. And it'll make things red. And that's really the advantage, is the beet powder. It doesn't make it taste like beets because you just use a small amount, but it will give things a pretty red color. And I know if you have children, and everyone's running around with green and red cookies, they want something that looks kind of like everybody else's. So I'm going to frost these scones, and you can each have a little scone. So we're still really eating breakfast here.
Maple syrup is not.
Maple syrup is not truly raw, and Giuliano says there's two things I do differently in my book now. He has a new book coming out. I don't use maple syrup, and I don't use cashews, because even cashews that say they're raw are generally, they're heated to get the nut off of the fruit. And cashews are actually in the poison ivy family. So people that have skin problems are probably better off avoiding cashews. We use namashoyu tamari, and it is cooked to begin with, but then it's been brought back to life. So this is the kind of tamari you want to use. There's many brands of tamari out there, but this one is unpasteurized. You can also find in the health food stores unpasteurized miso. So hopefully you'll like these scones. It's just something nice. It's nice to have something to greet guests when they come over.
Is it the apple raisin?
This is apple raisin scone, and I followed it exactly, except that I added a little bit of just cranberry to make it more holiday-like.
And how do you do the frosting?
The frosting was half a cup of macadamia nuts, half a cup of dates, and I needed a little more liquid, so I threw a little of the eggnog in there, but I could have and a little orange flower water, but I certainly could have used just water or almond milk or vanilla extract. Or what I'm just trying to get across is don't be afraid to substitute, because that's when you create some of your best magic, is just to say, oh, I don't really have walnuts, maybe I'll try it with pecans and so forth. We need a few more?
Were the cranberries raw or dry?
The cranberries were raw. Most dried cranberries that I've seen have sugar added to them. And these are organic cranberries. Keep
What
them
about
for me.
frozen fruit when you can't get
These are
fresh?
still not fully dried. Frozen, when you freeze foods, you are said to kill about 30% of the enzymes. However, that's not all of the enzymes, and so if I had to use frozen blueberries to make a blueberry pie, my preference would be to wait till we've got fresh blueberries and use those. But most raw fooders enjoy ice cream, and we love to just take bananas, peel them, freeze them, and run them through a omega juicer or a green life juicer to make banana ice cream. So I think that that's fine. It's certainly better than canning, and so my preferences in food preservation is dehydrating and then freezing, and canning is like just out of the question. Anything in a can has been heated to a very high temperature. And I mentioned Napoleon once already, but Napoleon's army were really the ones who started the whole canning thing. They were trying to find a military edge so that they could have food when they were out on the battlefield. And canning was really the answer. And so much of the food, the fast food that we use today, is really leftover war technology food. Margarine was a way of giving soldiers something that looked like butter out on the battlefield that wouldn't melt. Unfortunately, margarine doesn't melt in your body either. It congests your liver, which will congest your entire circulatory system.
Your scones are totally delicious, Bridget.
Thank you so much. Wow. And so the sprouted buckwheat became the grain, and I used the sprouted buckwheat like this to make the scones. And the food processor is definitely a must-have for the raw lifestyle, because you want to be able to grind stuff up. I'm going to show you how to make a raw kale salad. People think, can't eat kale raw, right? The only vegetable I have not been able to eat raw is artichokes. So if I were to eat an artichoke, I would probably cook it, and if I have to cook it, then why bother? So I'm just cutting the end off the kale. It's already been washed. This is so easy. This is something that we have as a meal probably at least once or twice a week. And I was actually learned this recipe from Chad Sarno, who's a wonderful raw chef. He was one of the chefs who did a lot of the recipes for Roxanne's restaurant. So I'm just cutting the kale up fine. Does it say, you see it in there?
Winter solstice salad.
Winter solstice salad, thank you. And I'm not going to do it exactly, but I'm chopping up the kale.
Do you eat all of the stems or just the stems?
I only cut off the very last inch.
Is that a plastic knife?
This is a porcelain
Ceramic.
knife. Ceramic?
ceramic. And a ceramic knife dull will cut better than a steel knife sharp. And it also doesn't tend to brown, because there's no oxide in it. It doesn't brown the vegetables where you cut it.
So in our salad, our kale salad, which I'll come right back to, I have put in 2 tablespoons of olive oil, half a teaspoon of Celtic salt, and 1 teaspoon of chili powder. Here comes the lemon juice. It's nice to have a little lemon juice squeezer, orange juice squeezer in a raw kitchen, because you want to start making your own salad dressing. Most salad dressings are heated. I called up a few of my favorite companies to find out, do you heat your salad dressing? And in order to have it have a long shelf life,
they do heat it, and not to mention heating it to make the salad dressing, the oils themselves are heated. Really, the only kind of oil you want to use is extra virgin olive oil or cold-pressed coconut oil. I did just find a macadamia nut oil from Australia that they cool the machine with water. But most oils, when they're pressed, they get to be about 200 degrees. And heated oils, haven't you heard that we get free radicals, which cause cellular damage? We get them from heated oils. And 2 summers ago, there was a big study that came out from Scandinavia. They found that when heated oils are mixed with carbohydrates and heated to a high temperature, it produces a type of plastic called acrylamide, and it's carcinogenic. And the Swedish government was very alarmed, and they said, if it were only a couple products, we would take them off the shelves immediately. But it's hundreds of products. So we're just going to have to do more research. Okay, so I've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, a teaspoon of chili powder, and a half a teaspoon of Celtic salt. Now the trick to make this look cooked is I'm going to massage it. And you're just going to have to know that I washed my hands, and I'm going to massage it. And it's going to taste like it had been steamed for 10 minutes.
How much kale?
I used 1 bunch of kale. Okay? So we've got a kale salad right there. Now, something you could do for the holidays, I'll just kind of improvise right here. If you had a flat bowl, you could even make it shaped like a Christmas tree and then put cherry tomatoes on it to be the little decorations. And I think just to round this out, we're going to put like a little circle of beets around it. And I'm going to have you...
Cut some beets?
Yeah. And then we're going to shred them in the food processor. Just to... I'm going to just take the beets and just make a little circle around here.
And that's just beets.
This is just grated beets. And I could do it the other way around. I could use the beets and the kale to make like a little wreath shape. You know, you could do something like that. I could have, put the kale around to be green and made little piles, but I'm, moving a little faster than usual. So, but that's certainly festive and holiday-like. Yes? Thank you. I'm actually going to toss it all together so we get some of the dressing on the salad. Okay, we got that. This has nothing to do with holiday food, but this is another essential thing that raw foodists need to know about. This is another great piece of equipment. It's called a spiralizer. And I'm putting in here a piece of washed yellow squash. I could easily use zucchini. And I'm going to just turn the little crank here.
Does the Cuisinart do that too?
No, the Cuisinart won't do this. So what we've done is we've made angel hair pasta. Okay, so if I wanted to look at that. If I wanted to serve spaghetti tonight, I would simply take the spiralized zucchini or yellow squash, and I could put sun-dried tomatoes, sun-cured olives, fresh basil, olive oil, pine nuts, and make an instant pasta dish. You could spiralize carrots and beets, jicama, but this is a great little tool. And, none of us want to give up pasta, but if you think about it, pasta is really just a bowl of white flour glue. And it would taste terrible by itself. It's a great medium for putting nice sauces and spices and salt on. And that's what we really like. And you can do that with this. What if I wanted to make lasagna? I would slice zucchini or yellow squash with like a cheese slicer and make big wide noodles. This will also make wide noodles, which I sometimes use for Asian dishes.
Why do the beets need to be skinned?
So I didn't really get it going yet. Beet peels, they're just a little tough and bitter. I tend not to peel things that don't need to be peeled, but again, this is a holiday dish, and if you make it too weird for people, it's not going to fly. So, real hardcore people could probably eat beets that were just well scrubbed. I don't peel carrots. And I think another place where you get a little B12 is eating, just lightly washed carrots. You don't have to scrub
Are
them.
there extra minerals in the skin of beet? Or?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't peel apples. Most things I don't peel.
Yeah.
I did peel the sweet potatoes, and I did peel the pumpkin for a pumpkin pie. Okay? So you kind of leave it up to yourself, and it's considered a little more refined to peel things, but, don't peel things more than you need to. Okay, maybe I'll do the sweet potato casserole. So I did peel sweet potatoes, and I'm going to put them in the food processor. Thank you.
What are you making now?
I'm making sweet potato casserole. Now, sweet potatoes, believe it or not, can also just be eaten raw. You can slice them as chips. They're delicious to use for dipping into guacamole. Also for party platters, slice jicama, slice zucchini. So you could also spiralize sweet potatoes and use them for noodles. And they're not in the same family as white potatoes. White potatoes are in the nightshade family, a family that also contains tobacco and deadly nightshade and belladonna and jimson weed. Some interesting plants, but not things you want to eat on a daily basis. Whereas sweet potatoes are in the morning glory family, the convolvulaceae family. So these are really a lot more user-friendly. And whenever there's a choice for color, go for more color. There's more nutrients, more phytonutrients in color, pink grapefruit rather than white grapefruit. The darker papayas rather than the pale papayas. The darker the lettuce. I recently learned that romaine lettuce means it's Roman, native to the Roman region, romaine lettuce. So that's over iceberg lettuce.
What about yams?
Yams, technically what we have in this country are sweet potatoes, even though they're marketed as yams. True yams are real big, and they're native. I think they grow in Africa, and they're not, what we are sold here are not really bona fide yams. So I'm going to let Tom take over for a minute here while I try to get the sweet potatoes done.
Now, for people who like bacon, here's everything that bacon is minus the pig. And what it is it's just young coconut. You take the water out of it, you can water for all kinds of things, and just drink it. And you take the meat out of the young coconut, put, what is it, Brigitte? Liquid smoke, nutritional yeast.
I'm going to tell you exactly. The meat of 6 young coconuts, a tablespoon of liquid smoke, about a teaspoon of Celtic salt, about a 1/4 cup nutritional yeast, and maybe a tablespoon of maple syrup. And I know maple syrup's not totally raw, but remember that bacon was always especially good when it was kind of maple flavored. So that's where that came from.
Like bacon, stick it in a dehydrator, let it dehydrate. Now it's better, we had this in the icebox, better right warm out of the dehydrator, obviously, or just room temperature. But you can get the sense that it's a whole lot like bacon, no pig, had to suffer or die. It's very delicious.
So I just am going to pass this around. Everything that's on your first recipe for cranberry sauce, we've got dates, which I didn't soak, grapes, oranges, and cranberries. I'll pass this around, and we're going to not puree this into a total mush. We're going to just pulse it, so it still is kind of chunky, because it's always nice in a meal to have a variety of textures. So we're going to do cranberry sauce. I'm pulsing the cranberry sauce. Okay, see how quick that is? Boy, we don't have to eat that gelled stuff that's like from the can.
We've had 25 people come to the class, prepare food for 25 people, and never had any of it not come out right.
Okay, now no Thanksgiving would be complete without mashed potatoes. We've already got sweet potatoes, but for this Thanksgiving, I would have made parsnips, mashed parsnips, but parsnips weren't around. They're not in season right now, or maybe they will be soon. So mashed potatoes could be cauliflower, and I think some of you maybe have been a little disappointed that the cauliflower is just a little too strong tasting. But I found that rutabaga makes a good mashed potato substitute, so do parsnips. To make mashed rutabaga, I have peeled the rutabaga, And I'm going to puree it in the food processor. And for a fat, I'm going to use soaked macadamia nuts. And keep in mind, too, that when you're processing your food, if it's too hard and crunchy, add a little water to it. If it's too runny, then add a little more vegetable to it. So you have to be willing to tweak things, but it's not like a cake, like, oh, I ruined it. And another good thing about making raw food is if the company doesn't come on time, it's still perfect. It's not like anything got too dried out or it got ruined, got cold.
It takes a lot of stress out of preparing food.
So here we have rutabaga, macadamia nuts, water, a little salt. This will be our mashed potatoes.
If I made a little cake out of ground flax and sprouted lentils and veggies and seasonings and stuff, and I just dehydrated it, does that mean I need to eat it right away, or?
Dehydrating it'll probably help to preserve it somewhat, but ideally, in the future you might leave the flax seeds whole and just grind everything else up. That's what I usually do. Probably one of the downsides to raw food, and there's not many downsides, is that the food doesn't last for 5 days. I remember I used to cook, brown rice and beans or, quinoa and lentils or something, and you could warm that stuff up for like 4 or 5 days in a row and then, make a new bean and a new grain. Raw food, because it is very vital, is going to start deteriorating. Dehydrated things will keep a lot longer. So like the flax crackers really would keep for months. But, salads and things like this, eat them that day, maybe the next day, maybe the day after, but that's really it. Because the life force is still in there. And, to me it makes sense that if you want to stay feeling vital, you want to eat food that has a lot of life energy that's not in the mode of decomposing. We're going to make gravy real quick because, that's something else people associate with the holidays. And then what we have for our entree is the holiday mushroom loaf. Okay, so you can see that I added a half a cup of water just because it looked like I needed it. I used fresh shiitake mushrooms, but basically it's a nut loaf, and it has poultry seasoning in it, which really makes it have that kind of like familiar holiday flavor. After the mashed parsnips, which we turned into mashed rutabagas, we're going to make good gravy, and it's so simple. It's 4 ingredients that are going to be blended, all right? Nutritional yeast, olive oil. It's 1/4 cup each. Nama shoyu. And I think I'll add just a little bit less water just so it won't be too thin. Wow, that's so nice. Gravy that you can feel good about. You could also substitute unpasteurized miso for the nama shoyu gravy, again, if you like garlic. We've cut back a lot on our garlic and onion consumption. For one thing, you don't want to be like a raw foodist that always has garlic breath. But we're just finding it's not that necessary. Some of my raw friends use lots of garlic and onions. They are high in sulfur. They can give some people gas. But we also think that they tend to be really stimulating. However, if you're looking for aphrodisiacs, garlic is considered an aphrodisiac. It's also considered not a good food for people who tend to get angry quickly. It's so heating. But if you're really cold and you suffer in the winter time, use more garlic and onions because they really are warming food. So here we go. We've got gravy right there. How simple is that? So I think we have the start of a dinner here. So I'm just going to say a short blessing. Thank you, Heavenly Father, Universal Mother. Thank you for all the blessings, all the help, all the lessons. Help us to know your will and do your will. Help us to be a comfort to those in need. Blessed be. So, come have some holiday Thanksgiving, holiday whatever. Not really Thanksgiving, holiday feast. So what I didn't talk about here is the holiday roast, and this was dehydrated. So this is the main dish. So you take a little slice of this. You might want to put a little gravy on this. This is with the shiitake mushrooms. So I'm going to go ahead and make a pie crust because I remember the old days of making pie crust, white flour and shortening it, or butter or oil and salt, and rolling it out, and it would always break into little pieces, and I try to press them in together, and it was really kind of difficult. So I'm just going to show you the new way that I make a pie crust. So I actually took pecans and I soaked them overnight and rinsed them, and I dehydrated them so they'd be crunchy. So I have 2 cups of pecans here.
Do they sprout?
They don't sprout little tails, but they do get soft, and they do get rid of the enzyme inhibitors. Okay, watch this. This is my idea of an easy pie crust.
Is that just the nuts?
It's the pecans and dates that I pitted. You've got the recipe right there. I'm just going to press it in right there. Would you ever want to roll out a pie crust again when you can just do that? Wow.
Pecan is soaked and dehydrated.
The pecan is soaked and dehydrated. Now, I didn't have to do that, but I don't like mushy nuts for a crust, so if I just soaked it and they were wet, that might not be so good. But another option would be I could soak the nuts overnight, rinse them, blend them with the dates, but then it would be mushy. Then I could put it in the dehydrator, especially if I had an Excalibur dehydrator, which has a solid shelf, and that could have made the crust crispy. But this is how I chose to do it this way. Now I'm going to pass around the pumpkin pie filling.
So basically, to eat any nut, it's better to soak it so that it gets rid of the enzyme inhibitors. Soak and rinse.
That's the best. However, there are exceptions to that. If I'm traveling, I might travel with some Brazil nuts and some dried apricots or figs or something like that. But for the most part, if I had digestive problems or I wanted to make the nuts more digestible, I would soak them and rinse them.
Seeds as well.
Seeds as well. So this is our pumpkin pie filling. It's pumpkins and almond butter, dates, a lot of spices like cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves. So it's a little hard to peel a pumpkin, but it's not impossible to do. Everyone get to see that?
With a knife.
I did it with a knife, not a carrot peeler. And now we're going to just put this in the food processor.
Are there apples in there?
My recipe says you could use apple juice, but I didn't have apple juice, and all bottled apple juice is pasteurized, so I just put a little bit of apple in there for flavor. You could just use water. So, and again, if it doesn't puree easily, I'll add a little water. What if my pie filling is too thin? I could add a little flaxseed to thicken it up. Because holidays without pumpkin pie just might not really seem that festive. If you don't have a food processor, you want one for Christmas. Or buy one for your sweetheart as a gift, and then you can use it, you know. I do want it totally pureed. Thank you. That looks so good. Bless you, heart. Yeah. Yeah, that looks really good. I think we got pumpkin pie. Let me just see if it's good enough to serve this gang here. Could be a little sweeter. I'm going to add just one little dash of honey. I didn't use honey for a long time, and I don't use it a lot because I've always thought that, that bees, we don't want to abuse the bees. But what I've also learned is that small bee companies are really doing a lot to preserve the health of the bees, and that we really should support small companies that are protecting the bees, that are making sure that they don't have all their honey taken away and get white sugar as a substitute. So dates is the primary sweetener in here, but, kind of last minute, I'll add a spoonful of honey, and I don't think anyone will mind. I can tell it's going to be good and creamy. And then we have a fruit cake. So thank you, Tommy. In the summertime, we're not heating the kitchen up to make our food. So we've got a pumpkin pie here, and it took about 5 minutes to do. I admit it maybe took me about 5 minutes this morning to peel the pumpkin. And I gave all the seeds back to the earth. I'm sure the squirrels will love me. They must love me. They've been coming in the house. They.
In the fruitcake, you use the quarter cup of flax seeds.
It's not blended. Okay, we got fruit pie.
Not soaked, right?
The flax seeds, I did soak them for a few minutes. I kind of decided to do that at the last minute. So, but I did not grind up the flax seeds. I kept them whole, and I pureed about half of the fruitcake mixture, and the rest I kept whole. So I'm going to put some knives and napkins out here and encourage you to come up and enjoy a bit of dessert. We have some. What I need is a pie server thing. Okay. So it's, just to be clear, it's optional whether to soak the flax seeds or not. I kind of thought it needed a little more moisture, so I did soak them. But if the cake was moister, I probably wouldn't have soaked them. Because if there's enough moisture in it, it'll take up. And then this is a fruit cake that isn't dried yet. Yeah, you could, but this is a fruitcake that I didn't dry yet. But if I wanted to ship, or if I wanted to, last for a few weeks, drying it will definitely help it to last. Okay, we have napkins. Servez-vous. So I'll put some holiday nuts out there. Okay, but I used more apricots and raisins. And I left the pineapple out. You could use pineapple. I kind of, I had several reasons for not using the pineapple. I wasn't sure that it wasn't sulfited. Tom and I will be around for a little bit answering questions. And I would just want to thank you so much. Tom and I really are happy to do these workshops together. I'm so glad he certainly does help me a lot more in the kitchen than he ever used to. But, mostly we really like turning people onto raw foods because I really think it would be better for everybody's health, better for the planet. Think of all the energy we would save. I think it's really a good thing for everybody. And we could save money, save time, have better health. Who wouldn't want that? It really seems like saying yes to life. So I want to thank all of you for your support and making this happen. Thank you. Thank you. Yay.